All right, let's bring in Darren Dreger. It is draft week, which is always exciting. It used to be really exciting for us here in Edmonton when they had picks and they were high picks.
Yeah.
Now we'll see if they can sort of wheel and deal, maybe move some money out to help set things up for free agency a little bit. But Dregs, on the scale of, free agency maybe being number one and the regular season in general being number like 4 or 5, where does draft week rank for an insider like yourself?
Well, it's an intriguing one this week, and I'm curious to see how it all unfolds. Managers keep telling me, NHL sources keep telling me how busy this week is going to be on the trade front, and I have no reason to question that. There's enough fodder out there in terms of some of the names that we've all been kind of speculating on based on contract negotiations, where they're at, stuff like that. I'm intrigued, mostly because it's a decentralized draft. And I'm not there to see it. So, how does that, we all work our phones, and that's 99% of how we gather our information. But I can't tell you the number of conversations that I've had with scouts, with agents, with managers face-to-face in lobby, hallways, or entrances where you're like, okay, this guy just heard that. All right, well, that gives me something to work on, and away you go. That happens all the time, every single year. That's happened for as long as I can remember. So the fact that it's decentralized and the managers aren't going to be there, is that going to make it more difficult, or is it going to make them more accessible? I guess it just depends on the relationship with the general manager and how eager he is to respond to our pestering over the next several days.
Man, it kind of makes me sad when you bring up decentralized draft, because I was a huge draft nerd as a kid. Like from the age of, 8, 9, Hockey News draft preview, loved it. Yeah. Then I started working for Hockey's Future way back in the day, covered my first draft, covered about, probably like a dozen of them. And you just get there and you see the draft floor and it just hits. Makes me sad to hear this decentralized draft stuff, man. A real buzzkill.
Yeah, it is. And there are many who wonder if this will be a one-off. So they're doing it because that's what the general managers wanted to do. And the reason the GMs wanted to do this was because of the toll that it takes, both financially and physically, on their hockey operations and their scouting staffs. To pick up an entire club and move them for a number of days to the draft city, which is virtually what they had to do, that was expensive, and physically it was a challenge. It definitely took its toll. And then you have to scramble back in certain cases to make sure that you're ready now for July 1st in free agency. So I understand and I appreciate why they're doing it, but I think as this past year kind of rolled along, there was regret and second guessing among those who favored it in the first place. And this was also what was interesting. I believe each club was given one vote. Not 4 or 5, one vote. All right, well, what if it's a governor that's voting? Or your owner has a different opinion on it than the manager, because the owner is the guy footing the bill. So I'm still pretty confident that it'll go back to the old way. And I'm with you, man. There's a personal touch to it. Aside from what we do, it doesn't matter what we do. I mean, we speculate. We're going to do that anyway. But to have those kids and those families get the whole spotlight, that's just a special part of the National Hockey League, and it's not going to be entirely like that this year.
Yeah, and even for fans, I remember I went to a draft when I was 16, 17. It was in Calgary, so I just whipped over from Cranbrook. We just sat in the second level, and you're just watching the tables and stuff. Yeah. And you're gonna miss out on that for sure. So hopefully they do get it back to the way it's been. What team steals the show this week? Like, which 1 or 2 teams are maybe going to be busiest, do you think?
Yeah, well, how about Seattle? Tip of the hat there, man. I mean, Jason Botterill and the Seattle Kraken being very active and interesting in the moves that they've made. They've made a couple. I'm lured to Buffalo, and that there's a buzz around Bo Byram, deservedly so, right? Because he's available for trade. It's not like Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres, are tired of this guy's work and they just, they don't see a fit for him. No, he's a great player and they'd like to lock into him long term. But Byram looks up at the top pairing, essentially, and it is Rasmus Dahlin and its own power. And he's looking at it and he's going, all right, well, I feel like I'm a top 1-2 defenseman. And I feel like I could play more power play time and all of that. So this is a career want by Bo Byram. So is there a market that is strong enough for Kevin Adams and the Buffalo Sabres to move on a trade of significance right now? Or do they just roll the dice and try and convince him contractually to negotiate and all of those things? Somebody steps up, then I think Adams makes that pull. They want a right shot defenseman coming back. That's the challenge for clubs. And then the worry is to what Bo Byram is going to cost on a long-term contract. But as far as the blue chip prospects available out there, I've heard Troy Terry's name. That's another one that's interesting from the Anaheim Ducks. Lots of names out there. But in terms of teams looking for defense, hard to beat Bo Byram as trade capital this time of year.
Darren, to the Oilers, and as Dusty mentioned, not so much maybe on the draft board, but an interesting player come the draft with a stout list of things to accomplish this offseason. Where do you think or expect them to go during the draft? We've seen John Gibson's name kind of pop up here again with regards to the Oilers. Of course, the Evander Kane situation. How much work and what kind of work do you see being done by Bowman and crew here at the draft?
Well, I think that there's a want to be as active as they can be, but man, Stan Bowman and the Edmonton Oilers are drinking from the end of a fire hose, aren't they? The pro scouting department, the amateur scouting department has gone about his business, and just because you make it to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final doesn't mean the organization is on pause. But obviously, the focus is on the Stanley Cup Final, so there's distractions that go in on that. It is going to be interesting with the players that you mentioned. Gibson's name has been out there for how long?
Yeah,
half a decade,
2, 3 years. With all due respect, if the Edmonton Oilers believed that he was a goaltending answer or even an upgrade, they would have moved on John Gibson a while ago, long time ago, right? They obviously just don't see the player that way, and in watching the Oilers and Stu Skinner and Cal Pickard, when you're comparing to Sergei Bobrovsky, of course, Florida's goaltending was better. But you could probably say that about any goaltender in the National Hockey League if they had made their way. Are we sure that if Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets had climbed their way to the Stanley Cup Final, that Hellebuyck would have been as good as Sergei Bobrovsky? I'm not so sure. And this guy won the Vezina in the Hart. I like his chances better than I might a Stu Skinner or a Cal Pickard. But I say that, and I'm trying to defend the goaltending in Edmonton. But I would also put it on the list of areas to upgrade. I would. But I just don't feel like John Gibson is an upgrade. I don't. So, that makes it then more trying to Bowman and company. Okay, well, what's available? What sort of upgrade is available? Don't know. Other areas that they've got to contend, they've got to figure out, okay, what did we like about John Klingberg? Is that something that we are good with moving forward? And beyond that, is our defense, is it the way we need it to be? And I'm not so sure it isn't, but they've got a mammoth negotiation that is going to take place sooner rather than later with Evan Bouchard. You've got Connor McDavid, and then you've got to want to get faster. But the problem that Edmonton has is the same problem that every cap team, contending team in the National Hockey League has. Everybody wants the same pieces. Everybody wants, a scoring forward that is, maybe he's a top 9, but for stints he can play in your top 6. Everybody wants that player, including Bowman and the Edmonton Oilers. So there's going to be some creative work that's going to need to get done. And maybe Bowman just waits to see how the dust settles in free agency. Maybe there's a bargain available that Edmonton can try and take advantage of, or somebody makes him a trade offer that makes some sense. I think he's open to all of the above.
It's funny you mentioned, a top 9 forward who maybe could end up being in the top 6 as well, because all last week it was rumored that they were pretty much getting a deal in place here with Frederic. Do you expect that to be locked in this week?
Well, I do. In fact, I would have expected that it was going to get done prior to the weekend.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the messaging that I got from both sides was that it just wasn't done. I mean, there was speculation on an 8-year term, just shy of $4 million. 10 days or so ago, early in the Stanley Cup final, another GM said to me that 99.9% chance that the Frederic deal was done, and his numbers at that point were 8 years at 3.8, which that jives with what was reported at 8 years at just shy of $4 million. But again, both sides, when I reached out, said we're not done yet, but they didn't say no. That's flat out not true. It's just when. Look, there was a good amount of negotiating. The meat of the deal was already there. The structure was there. The terms basically all in place. And then the Oilers kept winning in the playoffs. And it just seemed prudent and the right thing to do to park it so that everyone would focus on, what the Oilers did. And that was get to the Stanley Cup final. So I do expect it to get done in the very near future.
Darren Dreger with us on the show this morning, brought to you by Pro-Am Sports. So all of the cap space that they have are kind of going to be scooped up here by Bouchard and Frederic, which means they'll be in the market to maybe move some money if they want to change things a little bit. The one name that pops up a lot here is Evander Kane. When he's on, he's a unicorn. There's no doubt about it. I think he hurt them a bit more than he helped them in the Stanley Cup final. But what type of market do you think there would be for Evander Kane with a year left on his deal?
Slim, to be fair. For a lot of the reasons that you've just expressed, for a good chunk of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and this may end up getting the Oilers in trouble because of how good and how healthy Evander Kane appeared when he stepped right into the playoff mix. I mean, I guess it'll depend too on how eager Evander Kane is and looking for a change of scenery, right? But if you get the majority of the season of what we saw through much of the Stanley Cup playoffs, then maybe I'm being a little harsh and unfair in saying that it's slim. But I know that both the agent and the Oilers were researching trade scenarios right up to the trade deadline, and there didn't appear to be much of a market for them at that point. So I don't know why it would improve.
Dregs, good stuff. When's your next episode drop of Ray and Dregs?
Yeah, it'll be later this week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, just a pre-Stanley Cup draft edition. And then we'll do on either the evening on July 1st or first thing July 2nd. And then guess what happens?
Off to
summer holidays.
I was going to say off to the cottage or something like that, right?
Off to the cabbage.
Yeah, so that'll be okay. I don't know if we ever talked about this, but was there an appetite for Dregs and Ray as opposed to Ray and Dregs? Was there a big battle for that or what?
No, there wasn't, but it's funny that you asked that because way back in the day, the two Robs helped us with all of our podcast work out of Udio at the time.
Okay.
And it just, I guess Ray and Dregs rolls off the tongue better than Dregs and Ray. It feels like you stop after Dregs and Ray. So Ray and Dregs just seem to flow. But I think in jest, jokingly, tongue-in-cheek, I did ask one time. I don't remember us having a conversation about Ray and Dregs.
And of course, he's not going to bring it up.
No,
his name first.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
All right, good stuff, Dregs. Appreciate it, man.
All right, say hi to Ryan. Make sure that he's on the mend. I understand there was a aggravation of the Achilles on his trip back from Florida, apparently. Yeah.
Really?
So, he was limping in Florida because he hurt his Achilles, and then he was virtually bedridden when he got back. All of us thought he had the gout again, right? But it wasn't the gout. I don't know. He stubbed his toe and tweaked his Achilles, and he's just a flat-out 60-year-old mess.
Thank you very much for passing that. You're right. Like, he's not going to age well as an old man.
No.
Hey, I mean, Shoggy's going to be in a home at 61. Like, it's done and done. Like,
there's a lot of stuff that needs repair work, Good
stuff, Dregs. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, guys.
There you go. It's Darren Dreger, Ray and Dregs podcast. A new episode coming later this week, and then obviously right around free agency. What's going on with Shoggy Achilles?
It's all those years in the dub, that'll take a